What is up, dads? It's your boy Big Dave back with another episode of Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette. What's up, Mike?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well, Dave. This is kind of a cool little blast from the past that we did. It was nice. It was I think the first Culture Dads that I could I could prep for it with my kids. Although while I was watching Alien, it was a bit of a struggle to keep them away because they're just like, Dad, what are you doing? What are you doing? Just like, you don't want any part of this, trust me. But this was pretty cool. But it's
so I don't even want to say what we're doing. I don't even want to say it because I know the Culture Dads out there know what this is. They've seen it. They know it. They probably loved it. They should, if they're not showing it to their kids, they should show it to your kids. Mike, play it. Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Nostalgia time, boys.
Turn around. Look at what you see.
I love it.
The mirror of your dreams.
The mirror of your dreams, boy.
Make believe of everywhere.
Hidden in the lines. Written on the pages is the answer to the never-ending All right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Reach the
stars. Dude, that song goes so hard. We're going to talk about a movie, a film that was just, man, I loved this when I was a kid. It was brilliant. And we're talking about the Neverending Story. And I rewatched it. And we're going to talk about it. And you know what? This might be a little bit of a short episode because this film is just honest. You know, there's not really a whole lot. Maybe Mike has, Mike's really good at the analysis stuff. But, I don't know if there's a whole lot to be said. It just has everything that it has to say at face value and speaks it in unspoken ways. And it is so obvious that children got it. I got it. When I was like, this movie came out 3 years before I was born. And it was that big of a movie that it was like still super popular when I was a kid. When I was a kid, everybody was still watching this film. That's how big it was. So yeah. Mike, what is tell us about it?
Well, this is a big movie for me as a kid because I was born at the beginning of the 80s. And it was released in 1984, The Neverending Story. And, by that time, I would have been about 3 or 4 when it came out. Too young for it. But, several years later, it was still a going concern, very, very popular. It's a real piece of like 80s culture. You know what I mean? It's just like it's a fixture in that sort of time frame for children's entertainment. So, of course, I watched it many times, and it really hits hard. It's like you say, it's very honest. It's very straightforward, but there are some layers to it. I think we'll unpack those. We'll sort of peel that apart and kind of see what's going on there. There's definitely some like mythopoesis going on. But yeah, it's wonderful because it really has that same vibe of, the fantasy movies of the 1980s. It was the height of the practical effects era. And there was just something in the air. There was some sort of I don't know how it's hard to even put it into words. It's like it's a kind of like very vibrant color palette that was being used at that time. Just like even technically, even in films, like even though not a children's film, stuff like Conan the Barbarian, very very. I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just got its own feel, and it looks like nothing that would be coming out today. You know, it actually looks very cheap compared to today in some cases. Like you could definitely tell that they were using like a green screen for certain things. It doesn't quite like hold up in terms of like the technical stuff, but it still adds to the vibe, and it adds to the like putting you into that fantasy realm and everything. So it's got a very folkloric element to it. It's got a real sort of like 80s nostalgia element to it, which are two things that are in some ways actually in some kind of opposed. I tend to think of the 80s, like if you listen to the song that we just played, it's like a synth pop tune. Doesn't sound very organic or anything like that, but definitely the themes and the content of the movie are very organic and earthy and folkloric and mythic and everything like that. So this is kind of an interesting contrast in some ways. But so that's my experience with the movie. Dave, how about yourself? What's your history with it?
The Neverending Story. I remember it as far back as my life goes. Like I don't remember a time where I didn't know about this film. It was one of the first films that I like fell in love with. It was, I don't know. It was as you mentioned, there was something in the air. This was a film that they couldn't recreate this if they tried. Right. And as you said, dude, some of the stuff in there looks kind of corny now. The blue screen or green screen at this time just came out. It was new technology. If you remember the like original, what's his name? Christopher Reeve Superman movies, they used the crap out of it and it looks terrible today. It looks so corny and dumb. It's bad. But you know what? For me anyways, to see it is kind of, you know, there's a charm to it. There
definitely is.
Now, that being said, the what are they called? Animatronics, the puppets, the practical effects, aged perfectly like wine. They are just beautiful. You know, you're looking at a puppet, but the fact that it's the luck dragon is real fur, right? The Atreyu, the protagonist is really sitting on that thing. You know, that is really, really a thing. That's not computer graphics. And for me, I just thought it was beautiful. I thought it was beautiful. So to get a little, we're going to do a little bit of history. I'm not going to go one of my typical super deep dives, but as Mike said, the movie came out in 1984. It took a couple years to film. It was a big undertaking. This film cost it's a German film, by the way. A lot of people won't realize this film was made in Germany. It is a German film. It costs about 60 million German marks, which at this time was the most expensive movie made outside of the United States. And I believe to this day is still the most expensive German movie. I still
really?
And,
wow.
And yeah, I think so. I think so. So, so 60 million German marks. And it was directed by a guy named Wolfgang Petersen, who did a bunch of German movies. He was famous for one movie called Das Boot or whatever. But then he goes on to do a bunch of other movies. He did I think he did Troy. He did, what was it? I can't remember. He went on to be a good director. He's got a lot of good movies under his belt after this. So most of the cast were nobodies. And then after the film kind of did a couple things and went away. One of the guys named the guy that played Atreyu, the main guy, his name was Noah Hathaway. And after that, he did like 2 more roles and then he retired and he became a tattoo artist. And now he's like in his 50s and he runs a tattoo shop and he's got a mohawk and he looks like a biker dude. Yeah. He doesn't even look like that guy anymore, but I'd actually watched some stuff. People go to his shop. He keeps Neverending Story, like posters and stuff up front. So if somebody wants to get an autograph from him, he's always ready to do that. which is pretty cool. He's still to this day really appreciative of this film. He like loves it to this day. He still talks. He's like, you guys can never do something like we did. You guys would never be able to do that again. Good luck. And he's right. He's not being arrogant about it. He's just saying that this was a relic of its time. It was a wonderful film, and they couldn't do that again if they tried, right? They don't have the skills to do that. They don't know how to build. So 1984 cost 60 million German marks. It's based off of a book that came out in 1979 from a German guy named Michael Ende. I don't know how to pronounce it. He wrote this book called Neverending Story, and it was huge. It was huge in Germany. It got translated into English in like 1980, I believe, or 1881 or something like that. And it became a pretty big hit in the United States as well. And he actually got brought in, Michael Ende got brought in to help write the script. And what happened was the Neverending Story in the book, typical sensitive artist, typical author that doesn't understand film and understand these things, wanted a whole bunch of ridiculous, unachievable details from his book to be in the movie. And the movie guys were like, we can't get all that. We have this amount of time to do this. We have this budget. This is what we can do. And let's do our best to try to get the big points in. And he was just completely difficult. In the book, Atreyu, the main hero, he's got like green skin or something like that. They're like, we can't make the guy have green skin and like look cool. Let's give him a tan. Let's make him look tan and make him look a little bit different, right? Let's give him a bronze look. And he didn't like that. He didn't like what they did with the luck dragon. They changed the luck dragon around to make it look like something that's a little bit more like enjoyable by children, right? They didn't want a big, scary, fire breathing lizard because little kids might not feel with that, right? They might not want to hug a fire breathing lizard, so they made it sort of look like a dog because little kids love dogs, right? So they made it into a dog. He hated that. He hated this. He hated that. So the movie itself is actually only based on the first half of Michael Ende's Neverending Story book, and it's actually, if you read the book, I have not read the book because I actually refused to read the book because I loved the film so much. And when I found out that the author hated the movie and actually took them to court to try to make them stop producing it, take his name off it, and he sued them. He sued and lost, by the way. And they went forward with the movie. Pretty much what it was, Michael Ende was with them till the entire time until they're like, we got to find a way to end this movie. We're running out of time. We got to, so they came up with the ending. If you guys have seen the movie, in the end, Bastian, who's the other main character, flies in on the luck dragon and scares away his bullies, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the end. And Michael Ende despised this. And he told the writers, the director, he's like, you guys are turning my story into a Disney movie. And they said, yeah, we are. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make something that rivals Disney. And he hated it. He took him to court. He fucking lost, but I never read his book because I love the film so much. I don't even want to see what that jerk off says. I'm like resentful towards him that he hated this, and he hated it till his dying day. He hated the film, rejected it, talked shit on it until his dying day in 1995. So, I can't imagine. You write this book, and maybe at the time you remember we did The Exorcist, right? And the guy that wrote the book had a beef with the director. He got kicked out, and there's this whole kind of thing. And then they had beef. Yeah. And then after he saw how good the movie was, how much people loved it, he came around and they made peace. This guy held this grudge until he died, right? How is it that you could write this? A loose adaptation goes on screen, and here's the thing, dude. Authors are hard to work with. They're hard to work with. I'm an author. I'm hard to work with. Other guys that are, Mike can attest to this probably better than I can. They don't understand they don't understand marketing. And I'm not knocking anybody. I'm not saying anybody, I'm not talking shit, but a lot of them, they don't understand what it takes to market. They don't understand what the aesthetics around it have to be. They just want to protect their baby and have it perfectly adapted and have every detail, whatever they want the cover of their book to look like what's in the book. and it's just they don't understand these kinds of things. So when you take these guys and you like adapt their stories into movies, which requires way more compromise than just us publishing their stories, that you run into all kinds of stuff. So they had this beat. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, just to sort of touch on that same point, this is how it is when you're working with artists. Like it's interesting because I have I've been on both sides of the ledger. I've been the artist as a musician. I've also been the producer as a music producer. So I know what that's like from both sides of the chair, so to speak. Musicians are very much like authors. I mean, authors can they can paint anything they want onto their canvas, right? Because it's all just words, right? And you can do just about anything with words. And there's shit that you can do in a book that you cannot do in a movie, just even in principle. Like interior monologue or things like that, like just will never really translate on screen, or stream of consciousness that does not translate on screen. There's stuff that you can do with that medium that just is impossible in the other medium. And it's the same thing with musicians. I just remember, I was pretty picky when I was a producer, but there was times where you get a musician that'd be like, dude, I just want it to sound like it's like a 747 like crashing into a quasar, and it's like, can you make that sound? It's like, can you make it sound like more purple, bro? Like, it's not purple enough. It'd just be like, oh, for fuck's sake, you know what I mean?
Did somebody actually say that to you? That sounds like a real thing.
No, I'm just like, giving an example or whatever, but it's like that kind of shit, right? Musicians have these they cook up ideas in their head of like what they want things to sound like, and they're like, that's totally achievable because I can like hear it in my mind, bro. But no, I mean, like, the reality is, like, you're working within technical limitations, and it's a medium, and it has its own parameters and shit like that. And it's like there's time's ticking in the studio, and you're paying for this shit, and it's my job to keep the train rolling. Otherwise, you're going to be pissed off that the thing never went anywhere, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? The life of a producer, whether I'm sure it's a movie producer or a music producer, is really just one long babysitting exercise in so many cases. Anyway, without going too much further down that track,
yeah.
I definitely understand like what these producers would have been dealing with this author, because that's just the way it is. It's just like, as a producer, you have one foot in the technical world and one foot in the creative world, and you have to compromise. There's just no two ways about it. And really, the creativity comes in working out those, like, that compromise. So anyway, I very much understand what these guys must have been dealing with.
Yeah. So the book itself actually has a little bit of a different tone to it, has a different message to it. If you finish the whole entire book, I like I said, I haven't read the book, but I went through the cliff notes. I know what it says. I watched retrospectives or whatever, reviews, analysis of the book, and the book has a little bit of a grimmer quality to it. It's almost, I don't want to say it's a horror book, but it's definitely like it's reminiscent of the old folklore tales that have this kind of like warning, or like, if you do this is some sort of doom or something like that. However, the Neverending Story, the film, is like happily ever after. It's completely happily ever after. Although I will say that this film does have some pretty dark parts.
It definitely does. Yeah.
But before we go into our analysis, I want to point out a couple things, right? If you watch this film, right, the gigantic animatronics, the puppets that they use were incredible. If you guys ever get a chance, go watch like some film, like some YouTube videos of the making of this film. They had, for the Luck Dragon, for example, this thing was like 30 something feet long. It was massive. They couldn't even get the whole thing on screen unless they like lifted it up into the air, which took like 40 people to control this thing, just the face. There's a lot of scenes where you see it's just Atreyu or whoever like talking to the Luck Dragon just to his face. It took like 15 puppeteers with like levers and knobs and everything just to run it. And what they did is they got a guy that specializes in facial mannerisms to sit down with the puppeteers and show them this, and he would read the lines, like he would act out the lines as they were doing it, and the puppeteers had to memorize the lines. So you see it's almost weird and uncanny. These people just turning these knobs and doing these levers, and they're all mouthing the words as the dude's saying them, and they're watching the puppet on screen. And it took them tons and tons and tons of takes to get this right. It was unbelievable amount of work to get these right, and it was incredible. You know, it really was incredible. It cost a ton of money.
I'm sure
the casting was unbelievable. The director, Wolfgang Peterson, wanted specific people. He found the guy that Noah Hathaway, who played Atreyu, was I can't remember. They went through like 10,000 or 20,000 applicants to try to find the guy, and they found him. He got the part, and then the original director walked away. Peterson came in, and they had to start over again. So this kid had to go through like 20 different auditions to finally get the role. And like 2 weeks into it, a horse. They had the horse. What was his name? Artax. Remember? Artax, no, you go, you stupid horse. Oh my God, trauma. But anyway, they had like 15 horses on to play Artax, and they all had to be trained. It was a huge undertaking. One of the horses got spooked by something, jumped off of its corral platform, fell like 10 feet and landed on the Noah Hathaway, Atreyu, and broke his back. He had to go to he was in the hospital for 6 months and had to get his spine repaired. So it was, and to this day, it's still an injury he deals with. And he's like in his 50s. Yeah. So they didn't even know he was going to come back, but this kid wanted to do this film so bad. He like powered through his physical therapy and everything and got better and came back and did the movie. He took horse riding lessons, everything, right? And he, knocked it out of the park. That girl that they picked, what was her name? Tammy Stronach. Yeah. They're like, we want to find a little girl with otherworldly, ethereal beauty, untold beauty. The most beautiful little girl in the world is what they wanted. And, they found this girl, and she is she actually grew up. You can see she's old. She's starting to get older now. I think she's in her 50s now. And she's still a very nice looking lady. She grew up to be a beautiful, beautiful woman. But she did this film. She did like a couple other things. And then afterwards, she like opened a dance school, and that's what she did. And she's actually trying to do a new fantasy movie where she plays a queen. Her and her husband are trying to put it together. So she was
actually, I noticed in this movie that she was a great actress. Like for her age, she really like is very convincing with like her delivery of the lines and like the emotion and everything like that. You don't see that very often in child actors. So it's a shame she didn't continue.
She was excellent. The one scene where she looks into the camera like she's speaking to Bastion, and she's like, "Bastion, help!" or something. That was like powerful. You know what I mean? And the kid that played Atreyu was excellent. Dude, the horse scene where he's crying and screaming and everything. Dude, that was
I think every kid in the 80s cried during that scene.
Oh my God. He said that the actor said that he started doing this thing where he would go to cons or whatever. He would put out a bowl saying that with like single dollar bills in it, like hundreds of them. And he would say, if my scene with Artax traumatized you, here is $1 to go towards your therapy or something like that. He said every event, the bowl always got emptied out.
Probably within 5 minutes.
Oh, man. But so anyway, on top of that, another really cool thing is one of the voice actors, probably the premier voice actor in this film. His name escapes me now. I probably should have wrote it down. But he did the voice for the Luck Dragon. He did the voice for the Rock Biter. He did the voice for what was it called? Morlock or Morrock or Mortak or I can't remember what it. The evil wolf, right?
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, he was also the narrator, but he was also the voice of Skeletor, and I think he was the voice of Starscream and somebody else on Transformers. So this guy was his name
Gets around.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Oppenheimer. He was a really prolific voice actor in the 80s for cartoons and everything, and he voiced like 5 or 6 different things, and including the narrator. So to give a quick overview of the story, if you have not seen this film, the story starts with a young boy named Bastion. And Bastion, it starts out with a pretty dark tone. He's there, he gets up or whatever, he goes, sits with his dad. His mom is dead, his mom died, and it's him, and he's got a single dad, and his dad works a lot, and his dad's a real pull your self up by the bootstraps kind
of a cock, really. This guy.
Yeah, he's kind of a cock. He's like a
buck up, kiddo. Come on.
It's a real stiff, right? And he's getting on old Bastion because he's stinking it up in school. He's not doing good with his studies. He's like up in the clouds and everything. And he's just kind of like his dad's kind of like a dick. You know, he's like not being mean or abusing him or anything, but he's just kind of like, dude,
he just doesn't understand. You know,
he just doesn't understand. He just doesn't understand. He's too stuck in the material world, right? And actually, that's a beautiful contrast. That was a beautiful juxtaposition that they showed there between what the world is trying to pull from you as a child. I've written about this before. I describe it as the modern world cuts imagination from young children like it's a cancer, right? And this embodies that entirely.
Kind of the theme of the whole movie, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to explain it real quick, and then we're going to get talking. So so that happens. Bastion, he encounters these 3 bullies, which I actually think there might be some symbolism in the 3 bullies. Like they could be something like the Fates or something like, I don't know. There's something in there. I think I didn't really think it out, but they beat him up. They throw him in a dumpster. He's like a complete loner. He goes to this weird old shop. There's this weird old man. There's this book here with this like double Ouroboros. He's reading it. He's like, oh, what's that? He's like, oh, I can't tell you. This is a dangerous book or whatever. And then the shop owner purposely leaves it out, so he steals it. The kid steals it. The shop owner's like, hey, you're looking through the window at him because he did it on purpose. Then the kid runs up. He opens the book, and then this begins this really cool duality between the kid real life and the world of Fantasia, which is implied to exist only in his imagination. Right? He imagines this entire world as he's reading the book, and it becomes a little bit strained because the characters in the book become aware of him and start interacting with him. And the story in this world is that there is this entropic, destructive force called the Nothing, and it's fueled by people's disbelief and people's hopelessness and sorrow and like all this. It's fueled by all the bad stuff about people, and it's eating Fantasia. And what happens is she's called the childlike empress, right? That Tammy Stronbach. She says, I need a great hero, and this little boy comes up and says, I'm the hero. It's Atreyu, and everybody laughs at him or whatever. And he gets this like artifact called the Oron or something like that. And he goes on this grand adventure, meets all kinds of crazy people and crazy characters and weirdness. And he goes and he saves the world. And it's that's pretty much the story. And it's a fantastic story.
Yeah. And one other thing I want to sort of just point out about the story is that over time throughout this story, the kid Bastion, who's introduced at the beginning and who's the one reading the book, and the characters in the book itself start to, like, the line between the reality of like the mundane world and the reality of the story starts to get blurred. There is like it becomes clear that Bastion is involved in the story. He's actually integral to the plot of the story in the book that he's reading. And he's like, part of like the narrative arc of the movie is him coming to grips with that and being like, no, this can't be right. It's just a story. Why are they talking about me? Or are they talking about me or whatever? You know what I mean? Because there's like one of the sort of like, the main thing that the character Atreyu needs to achieve in the story is to he needs to save the childlike empress, and by that he needs to give her a name, but that name needs to be given by a human child. And he's like, he's trying to figure out how to find this human child. This is like the quest that he's going on and everything like that. And little do they know that the human child in question is in fact Bastian himself. And it's actually quite an interesting story. Like, the structure of the story is very interesting in that way. I'll kind of come back to that because I do have like a kind of deeper take related to that. But it's I also wanted to talk a little bit about this nothing, the nothing, which is really the villain. It's interesting that the villain in this story, there is that wolf character, which is really the I forget what it's called, the Morlock or something like that, or Morlock or whatever. But that's really sort of the agent of this thing called the nothing, which is erasing. It's basically erasing parts of Fantasia to where the entirety of this world will eventually be consumed by this nothing if Atreyu doesn't save the childlike empress. And it's a very unusual villain. I mean, most villains in or antagonists in stories are quite concrete. Like, it's a character and the character has these traits and everything like this. But this antagonist is really actually just pure abstraction. It's the absence of something. There's even an interesting line given by the giant rock biter guy, this huge mountain like rock guy that eats other rocks or whatever, which actually he's my favorite character in the whole story. But anyway, I love it. But so there's an interesting line by him where he basically says, what was it? He's talking to the guy with the top hat from the West or whatever. And he's saying, back in the North where I'm from, we had this beautiful, like all these beautiful mountains with these delicious rocks and this huge lake, but now the nothing has come and erased it all. And the other guy's like, "What, you mean the lake's dried up or whatever?" He's like, "No, there would be a hole, or there's not a dried up lake or a hole. That would be something. This is nothing, right? It's just the erasure of reality, which is." It's such an interesting thing. I remember back in the day, like when I was a kid watching this movie, just there was a kind of dread about that, like almost like a Lovecraftian dread of this force. It's not even a thing. It's like a force that was just erasing reality. You know what I mean? It's like something that's hard to comprehend. But there was a kind of Lovecraftian terror about that sort of comes from the pure abstraction. And really what it is, the nothing, as it's revealed in the plot throughout the story, what the nothing is fundamentally is it's the disenchantment of the world, right? It's the mundane world that no longer believes in stories, no longer believes in myths, no longer has hope, as they say, and is basically unable to create culture, right? So it's this disenchantment that sort of bleeds into the story realm from outside. Again, we kind of get this like the border between story and reader is constantly being played with throughout this movie. But anyway, it's the disenchantment that is the fundamental antagonist throughout the story. And I think that this is actually something that is quite mythically deep, because of course our world is a world of disenchantment, and it has been really since the axial age. This is kind of the progressive disenchantment of the world, the loss of the magical worldview, as Max Weber would have called it, is something that's been going on for a very long time. And the story kind of like it's a good way into that for children. So yeah, and it's like it's also very interesting because we get the childlike empress who at one point basically says that Fantasia, this world, this fantasy world that's like, you know, the world of the story, can arise within you, right? As she says to Bastian towards the end, because he has a part to play in this. Like there's a dialectic going on between the audience, which is him, and the story itself. And I think that's kind of interesting because there is always a dialectic going on between the audience and the poet in the ancient world, where the audience is as much a vessel of cultural creation as the poet himself, as the creator. In that it's called the Anderson's law of autocorrection, which is a fancy way of saying that the audience basically dictates what the story is going, the parameters of the story. And it's actually a force for conservatism in storytelling, whereby, like, this is one of the reasons why folktales can persist for thousands and thousands and thousands of years without really changing all that much, or with at least the basics remaining intact, the outlines being discernible through immense spans of time, is because it's because of audience expectations. Basically, the audience gets pissed off if you mess around with this thing too much, and they will, they will just basically say, like, we don't like that guy the way he tells the story. Let's listen to this other guy named Homer or whatever. He kind of tells it the way it's supposed to be told or whatever. So it's this like audience driven conservatism in storytelling. Which explains how these things could persist so long. But there's all just to say that the audience has something to do with it as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's something that I certainly didn't pick up on when I was a kid, but when I was rewatching it, like just today, it definitely occurred to me that the audience and we all of us as a folk are collectively engaged in culture creation. It's really hard to say where that comes from, that it's definitely originates in this guy or whatever. It really, I mean, even like genius creators are expressions of the folk soul themselves. So yeah, that was something that actually it kind of hit me while I was watching this movie. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that the nothing is sort of a Lovecraftian sort of entity. It truly is. In fact, I would be surprised if actually I should say I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't inspired by the Lovecraftian mythos entity, the Nameless Mist. The Nameless Mist is it's a child of Azathoth. It's a brother of Nyarlathotep, and it is this nothingness, this kind of void entity thing that has no name and no form, and all it does really is only gets named a few times. It only gets mentioned a few times throughout a few different stories. Like we're talking, I think it's in The Whisper in the Darkness. I can't remember, but that's the one that comes off the top of my head that it gets mentioned in. And pretty much what this entity does is, as it spreads, it warps reality into like this, incorporeal, corporeal, acausal kind of thing, right? It just, wherever it goes, it unweaves reality, right? And that is sort of what the nothing is. And another thing, speaking, you guys out there that have not dug into Lovecraft need to dig into Lovecraft, because this guy,
we need to do an episode on Lovecraft. I mean, how have we not done this yet? But
I don't know. Anyway. It's going to be 3 hours long. We might have to do it in parts.
Might have to be a series.
Yeah, but one of the things that Lovecraft was huge on, and why this film is actually pretty Lovecraftian, and it's not just because of the uncanny stuff and because of the nothing. It's also the base premise of it that Mike just talked about, this blending between the real and unreal, and how this is a special thing, right? I'm gonna here's one of Lovecraft's quotes from one of his books. He says, "There is no sharp distinction betwixt the real and the unreal. All things appear as they do only by virtue of the delicate individual physical and mental media through which we are made conscious of them. But the prosaic materialism of the majority condemns as madness the flashes of supersight which penetrate the common veil of obvious empiricism." And what he's saying here is that those people that are, he says, those of broader intellect. It starts out, he says, they're those of broader intellect see that there is no sharp distinction betwixt the real and unreal. So what he's saying is that smart, imaginative people see that there is a special world in the imaginal realms, and that which separates them is not as big as we think. Right. And it's in that realms comes so many special, wonderful things, and our perceptions of reality. He goes, it's a big, huge thing. We can talk about it all day. But what he's saying here is that although there are these dreamers out there that look into these imaginal qualitative realms, these dream worlds, these dreamlands, these dream seas, and they draw this, they get lost in there and they draw these wonderful ideas and visions, etc., that despite that, the majority condemns it as being nuts, right? You're a daydreamer, you're a fucking fantasy, you're in a fantasy, this is a power fantasy, this is that, this is the, and they just have all of these different things, and they just think that you're kind of kooky and nuts if you are one of these dreamers, and that you're not saddled in reality like Bastian's father. So, dude, what are you doing like up in the clouds, bro? You got to get your feet down here, you got to get a job, you got to grow up. Like the whole idea that imagination is for children and you need to grow out of it is just a hideous part of modernity that I think sucks beyond. I hate it so bad. Because that imagination, that power of imagination, those dream realms are what our ancestors drew upon. Our ancestors did not have this materialism. We talk about this all the time. They had the magical worldview, and the world that they inhabited, the world that they perceived, was far more beautiful. It was far weirder. It was also more dangerous. It was full of wonders and terrors, and in their real life, they viewed it as such. And because of this, they did so many more wonderful things. Right. So, at the end of the day, the Neverending Story is a celebration of imagination. It is it is probably more Lovecraftian than some like film you see with tentacle monsters. It is Lovecraftian in its purest premise. At its core, it like embodies, like if Lovecraft was around, he saw this film, he would be in love with it. He would be like, that is it. You guys understand me, right? And what this does is it speaks to children. The Neverending Story. Because let me tell you, outside of Roger Ebert, believe it or not, Roger Ebert actually gave it a 4 out of 5. All of the other critics out there of that day shit all over this movie. Said it was kitsch, said it was fantasy crap, said it was a bunch of puppets and garbage, and they didn't get it. They hated it. They trashed it in the reviews. Guess who loved it? Kids. Because what this did was it reaffirmed what kids innately know. My buddy Astral, right? He had a tweet that went completely nuts a while back, and it gets screenshotted. I see it shared all over. He said in his tweet, he says, everything that you thought was cool when you were 12 was cool. Tits, Terminator, heavy metal, all that shit was cool. It's still cool. And he's right. All the stuff that you think is cool when you're a kid, all the stuff that you think is special and wonderful and imaginative, and the stuff that you fall in love with in your youth is still cool. You just you get conditioned and shamed and chased out of that world. And I hate it. And the Neverending Story, watching it, I'm like pumped today because I watched that movie and I just felt I don't even know how to say it. I just feel pumped today because it just reaffirmed everything special about childhood, about youth, about imagination, about fantasy, and all of this. And this is what it's embodying, and it's showing you that there is a little bit of esotericism in there. Like Bastian sort of, he goes to the top, right? He goes to that attic, which is sort of symbolic, right? He goes to the top of the thing. He's got this book that has the 2 interlocking Ouroboros, right? The Ouroboros is like a symbol that, it could be interpreted a lot of ways. But one of the main ways that it gets interpreted is kind of like this the locking in of imminent reality, like the blending of the real and unreal, the blending of the holy and the mundane, making like creating like imminent wholeness is sort of what it means, is what a lot of people interpret it as. And maybe Mike can correct me there, but on the book, it has two Ouroboros intertwined together, which is sort of saying that, yes, there's the imminent material reality, but beyond that is the dream reality, and it is woven into our imminent reality. And that is what what is behind this cover. And that's what happens. As he reads, he sort of goes through this initiation. He goes to the top, right? He goes, it's almost like he's Odin, right? Going to the top of Yggdrasil to sit on his throne and to see all of reality as it is, and to get reality, he sees all of the worlds, his ravens fly out and learn all of the stuff about all of the different worlds and all of the realms of dimensions of reality. And they come back and they tell him. So he's almost doing like this Odinic thing where he goes to the top of the building, goes to the top of the world tree, and he opens his book and he learns the secret of the runes, and he learns about all of these worlds of reality that are woven between the immaterial and material and real and unreal. So it's like, that's sort of what I got from that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of mythic sort of themes underneath the surface. I think that you picked up something up on something there with the duality that is definitely like it's laden with myth all the way throughout the story. Like one of the things that I thought was really cool, like it really worked as a plot mechanism, was just the fact of Atreyu having to go through like the different gates and everything like that, where he's like sort of progressing on his journey. This is a very like it reminded me at first a little bit of like RPGs or something like that, you know, where you have to go through different like, you know, kinds of quests before you can actually like confront the final boss or whatever it is. But then I sort of thought about it a little bit more, and it actually seemed to me that him going through those different gates and having to like achieve those different things, like at first, what was the first gate? I forget what that was exactly. But the second gate was the one where he has to like confront himself in the mirror, right? And then like this is the part of the movie where like you really get the idea that Atreyu and Bastian are like maybe one character or aspects of one personality or something like that, because like it's very clear based on like that scene where he's looking into the mirror and he sees himself, but he also sees Bastian. And it's just like, you know, there's so many cool things that are like in there when like he's just going through like the different parts of like his quest, right? It's just you can kind of feel like there is a progression going on. Like he's going through these stages and then doing different things, and it actually reminded me a little bit of Hercules' labors. It sort of brought that to mind of that you have to do this, and then you have to go through that, and it was really like that's a very common trope in the heroic quest or in folklore as well. Like there's a folk tale type where usually what happens is one man has to go and talk to God or talk to the sun or some sort of high god deity or like transcendent deity. But first he has to go through like different different villages, and each of the villages has a problem, and he has to solve it. Like usually one of the problems is that they can't get water from their, fountain or something like that. And it turns out that there's like some sort of frog that's like living at the base of the fountain and like blocking it off, and he has to do something, and then the frog will move, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it's always three things. You always have to go through three of these things in this folktale type, because there's threes all throughout folktales. And it's very reminiscent of that as well. Like it seemed, I think there were actually like three gates or something like that, but it reminded me a little bit of that, like going through the Hercules labors and things like that. Another piece of esoterica that I picked up from this movie was when the fact that the Empress needed a new name, which is a very interesting plot point. I mean, that makes no sense. It makes no logical sense. Like, how would that save the universe? How would that save this story or whatever? But it's naming as a naming as an ontological act, as an act of bringing something into the world or into being. Like, the fact of giving something a name is, in a sense, creating that thing, is a very ancient idea. There's a it's not exactly like creation, but the importance of the name to something is, we get this in Fafnismal, where when Sigurd has fatally wounded Fafnir, the giant or the dragon, he is very careful not to reveal his name to Fafnir, because otherwise he might, like, the dragon might speak his name in a curse, and speaking the words of a dying man were always thought of as having important, like, quite a bit of, like, esoteric power among the Norse. So the fact of speaking the name is ontologically significant in that story as well, and it was very, very significant ontologically to the Egyptians as well, to where the pharaoh himself would be given a name that everyone knew, like a number of names, like the family name, the clan name, and the given name and everything, but there would be a secret name as well that only the pharaoh and his parents would know, so that curses could not be pronounced upon him. Because if you don't know the name of a thing, then you can't attach metaphysical weight to a pronouncement about it, right? This is the way that these people looked at it. This is the way the Egyptians looked at it. For them, naming was an ontological act. To name a thing was, in a very real sense, to bring it into being, to make it real. And similarly, to unname a thing was to erase it from being. As a result, like, pharaohs would erase the names of their rivals from their tombs when they would, basically usurp the throne or whatever. If your rival was the pharaoh, the last pharaoh or whatever, you'd go into his tomb and you just erase his name from all the walls. So it would be scrawled all over everything, because, again, they believed that to be named was to exist, and if once your name is forgotten, you don't exist. So they would purposefully make their name be forgotten as a result of that. This was just how it worked, is just how their metaphysics worked. And you get this in the story as well. Basically, the kid Bastian, it's ultimately the final sort of plot point in the movie, is that he has to give the name to the Empress to make that, to bring back the world, the world of Fantasia, to give it ontological standing, to make it real, to dispel the nothing. He has to name something. He has to name the Empress. And I think this is very, very significant. And I doubt that the people, or the author who wrote this book had all of this esoteric background in mind when he wrote that, but he was clearly tapped into something. He was tapped into some mythic undercurrent, that naming is important, that it is, in some way, naming something is to metaphysically conjure it. So, and that's exactly what you get in this story. And this seems all very esoteric and very, like, it's got no down to earth application, and that's fine, because it's fantasy, and fantasy stands on its own. It doesn't need to have practical application to be valid, but it does have practical application, I think. When in our mundane world, if I can contaminate our fantasy world with the mundane for a moment, in our mundane world, when you name something as disinformation or hate speech or something like that, when you nominate something as this category, this really actually does have important ramifications for our lives, right? Like, if you can, like, convince everyone that such and such a thing is racism, or such and such a thing is sexism, or is election interference, or whatever it might be, then you have power. You have a metaphysical power over the world in a way that it goes beyond mere words, sort of thing. In a real sense, what the whole arc of the post-2016 world has been for us, for the radical right versus the liberal mainstream, has been a battle over who is the onomastician, who is the namer, who is the one that gets to define things, who is the one that gets to name things. That battle has been opened up since about 2015, 2016, the meme war and everything like that. This is no longer clear from at least the French Revolution, and maybe much earlier than that, up until our time, with some points where that was also contested. Basically, liberalism has been the namer, the namer in chief. But this is changing, and this is part of why they are so worried. Why are they're so allergic to us being able to name anything, being able to say that that race is real, or any of the stuff that any of our talking points. This is why we have to be. We cannot even be admitted into the public sphere, into the public conversation, because otherwise the power of our framework, the power of our mythic understanding of the world will come to contaminate theirs and overpower theirs. This is what they're worried about. So naming things is anything but trivial. It's not just a sort of like whimsical plot point in the movie. This is very important. It has a metaphysical undertone, a metaphysical undercurrent. And for me, this was actually one of the most powerful aspects of the movie, because I'd basically forgotten it, right? Like, watching this movie, I haven't watched it in like 30 years or something ridiculous. So to watch it again and like to see all this, like all the memories come flooding back, but also like within the context of what I now know, all of the knowledge that I've gained and everything, it actually made it so that the movie was fairly deep experience, which it was quite refreshing. I thought it was just going to be kind of like fun and fantasy, but it was actually quite a bit more than that. So yeah, it was great to rewatch it.
Yeah, I kind of want to take a little step back to, you mentioned about Atreyu. Here's another thing that I find is strange, is that Atreyu and Bastion are sort of like the same guy, right? It doesn't really say that. Yeah. But Atreyu and Bastion are kind of similar. And what this kind of like brought to my head was the lays of Svipdag in the Edda, right? Svipdag is thought to be like an avatar or an extension of Odin, right? One of my theories is that Bastion is sort of going through an Odinic process, or is an Odinic figure. He's like he's dreaming this world into existence. He's at the top of the thing on his throne. He's opening the book, The Secret of the Runes, and then standing in his stead in the adventure is Atreyu, who reminds me of Svipdag, right? And where do you first see Atreyu? He goes and he's like announces, "I am the hero," and he's like, he goes to the childlike empress who's standing before this otherworldly gate or this portal thing in her castle. And he's saying, she's like, "Well, I need this for this name or we're all going to die. I need a hero. And here is your blessings," et cetera, et cetera. Well, if you read the Lays of Svipdag, it goes, it starts out with what's called Groesgalder, and then it goes into, what is it called? Fjol something's mere, what is it called? Fjolsvithsmal. I can't remember. But anyway, I have it right in front of me. The beginning of Groesgalter, right? He says, I can read it in Norse if you guys want. I'll read the first two stanzas in Norse and then we'll talk about it. He says, Vaki thu groa, vaki thu goth kona, vek egg thik dautra dura. Ef thu thouth mand, a thu thin mog betir, till That's a hard word. He says, Kumbuldisyar koma. And this what this means. He says, wake up, Groa. Wake up, good woman. I rouse you at the doors of the dead, hoping you remember that you bid your son come to the burial mound. Now, childlike empress is not rising from the dead. She's not a seeress rising from the dead, but she is standing before these gates that are kind of in between worlds. So she is almost like a Groa. She's almost.
I'll
like
also point out that he gives her the name of his dead mother too, doesn't he?
Oh, dang! Whoa!
There is a reincarnation aspect to it, like a rising from the dead.
Yeah, and he says to Groa, hoping you remember that you bid your son. Like there's this kind of like, this mother-son relationship between Groa and Svipdog, even though they're not actually related. And that same thing happens in a Neverending Story. So next stanza, this is pretty good too. He says, Falð nú ant, minum en skagni, ferju ertu nobolvi borin, tu þá máþur karar, til módor komin, og úr ljóðenheimun lithin. And what this means is, he says, what now troubles, the Groa says to him, what now troubles my only son? What misfortune ails you? What would you call upon that mother who is dead and buried, passed away from the world of men? And then it goes in, she says, I give you a dangerous task, was given to me by the crafty woman, the one who embraced my father. She bid me to go to a place known to be unapproachable, to meet with Menglod. And what happens is, and then it says, long journey, long roads, long last are the yearnings of men. If it come to pass that your wish be granted, then Skuld's decree is at fault. So, and then it goes on that, the son says, Svipdog says, sing for me these magic spells, which are, blessings, right? Give me these blessings, give me your blessings so I may finish this quest and do this. So what is happening with Neverending Story is that they have this mother-son relationship, this kind of like esoteric mother-son, this symbolic mother-son relationship. This guy with this otherworldly, powerful woman, right? Not like girl boss, but like a seeress or a priestess or something of this nature, the childlike empress, right? And she says, here is your gifts, here is your blessings to go finish this. So then Svipdog goes on this journey and passes through these gates, right? I believe there's three trials, 3 gates he has to pass through. As the story goes with Svipdog, he becomes more enlightened, he becomes more powerful, he becomes like enlightened, right? He like ascends, right? He ascends through, and it's almost like Bastion and Atreyu as the bonds between reality and unreality dwindle, and they sort of meld and become the same guy, sorta, and real and unreal. But this could be interpreted as like ascending into some sort of enlightenment or some sort of awakening or some sort of wisdom, great wisdom. And at the end, in Symbolism or whatever the hell, it's like happily ever after.
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have so much trouble remembering this stuff. It says, no longer need I wait for the fulfillment of my desire for you, nor you for my love. Now it is certain that we shall be together for the rest of our lives. And what is going on here is how this has to do with Neverending Story. At the end of Neverending Story, Bastion rediscovers his confidence through his journey. He discovers who he is, and he finds his place in the world, and he kicks a bully's asses, scares him off, and he reaches that point where him and this fantasy world that he created, the childlike empress, and all of this is hunky-dory, happily ever after, and they are together and for the rest of their lives in this loving relationship. So it's I'm reaching a little bit here, but it just it feels like Svipdog. It feels like this mythic theme in there as well.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. That it definitely, there are some resonances there. I believe is that the that's the short Voluspa, isn't it? Something like that. Anyway,
Mhm.
Voluspa being obviously the Epic poem where basically the cosmology is kind of like laid out the most. So there is a, with the creation of the world, the creation of Fantasia, by his naming the childlike empress after his mother, which is kind of in some way a resurrection of this female character, female, like just female presence. I could see the resonances with that. It's quite, if not absolutely clear, like it's certainly the author didn't like read through Svipdagsmal and take this and then just copy paste it into a story or whatever. But I think it speaks volumes that these resonances are there, and he's tapped into something. You know what I mean? Like the story has tapped into something. May not have even been the author, because I'm not sure. Like, as you said, they kind of had to like wrap up the movie halfway through the actual novel, so it might have been the director and not the author. But anyway, somebody has tapped into something, and it's definitely there. But I think, and also in a somewhat of an interesting way, even though there are mythopoetic themes, even there are mythic themes and folkloric themes running through this, it's also a very modern story in some ways. Although I'm going to make the argument here that like this modern mode is actually something ancient, but there's a very postmodernist streak that runs through the Neverending Story, in that it is a meta story, right? Like that's so meta. Like it's that's something that you hear millennials say all the time or whatever. Yeah. It sounds very modern. It sounds kind of like, oh well, whatever. And I think the like probably the paradigm of like postmodern film or postmodern like on-screen entertainment is something like Seinfeld, right? Where you have the character Jerry Seinfeld, who is played by Jerry Seinfeld, the actual comedian, and it's about his life as a comedian. And one of the plot points in the story, and like the narrative arc of the series, is the securing of the pilot, right? Like it's very meta. The whole thing is almost like a hyper cube. It's like this hyper reality. It's a show about nothing that's about the real life of the actual actor as played on screen, and it's the whole thing is that he's supposed to get a TV show. You know what I mean? Like the thing is, it's just meta all the way through, and so this is very postmodern. Seinfeld has been often cited as an example of like postmodern entertainment that's done right, because it was hugely successful. Well, I think that you could actually see quite a bit of postmodernism in the Neverending Story as well, because there is a story within a story, right? And you get this feeling, at least I got this feeling while I was watching the movie. And I remember getting this feeling as a child while watching the movie, that just as Bastian is involved in the story that he's reading and the actual book that he's reading, just as he's involved in that, so are you, the audience, involved in the movie, right? Because what it's basically saying is that it's the participation of the audience in the culture creation with the story itself that really matters. I mean, this is obviously the important driver, the engine of the plot in this story. And there was like many times where I found myself thinking like that I myself was involved in the movie in the same way that he was involved in the book. And there was a line spoken by the childlike empress where that really came home, where she says, just as he is sharing our story, others are sharing his, right? And I think that this was meant to reach out to the audience and to kind of say to them in no uncertain terms that the meta level narrative within the story is also something that exists outside of the story. Again, we get this like the boundary between the inside and outside, the boundary between the story and the audience is just always being played with throughout the movie. And it's even being played with from the movie to the movie audience as well. And of course, there is the story within a story, right? It's the whole idea of the Neverending Story is it's a story about a kid reading a story. You know what I mean? And this is actually something that's quite ancient. The story within a story is a well-worn trope, I guess, of storytelling. You see it in the Mahabharata. It's all throughout the Mahabharata. There's actually like layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of nesting within the Mahabharata because it's so massive. You see it in the Odyssey as well, where Odysseus, most of what people remember about like the episodes in the Odyssey that people think of, like they think of him getting stranded on the island with the witch, or going to visit Achilles in the underworld, or like doing battle with the Cyclops, or pissing off Poseidon and things like that. All of this stuff is actually related in the story as Odysseus sitting down at the table of King Alcinous and telling him that story. You know what I mean? So it's there is a story within a story in the Odyssey. There's many stories within stories in the Odyssey. You get this in Hamlet as well, where you get the play within the play, you know, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king and everything like that. Now it's not, it is crucial to the play. But it's one small part of Hamlet, but it's still there. It's still quite important. And you get it in, and of course you get it in modern stories as well. You get this in The Princess Bride as well, which I believe has a whole frame story about it, where it's the grandfather telling the child the story of the Princess Bride. I think that's the whole frame around which this thing happens. Anyway, this is all to say that the story within the story is something very ancient, and the Neverending Story takes that to another level and really plays with that theme. It's very postmodern, but I believe that postmodernism is actually something very ancient. And I know that this is a hot take. It's a controversial take. But if you look at the postmodernists, that term is kind of a little bit vague. If you look at the post-structuralists, which is kind of taken to be the postmodernist philosophers, you look at people like Foucault, you look at people like Derrida, you look at Deleuze, and people like that. Mostly, if you could sum up what the observation is, the core observation of postmodernism, a lot of people think it's just bullshit. A lot of people think that the postmodernists are just jerking off and sort of not really saying anything and just like playing with words. I don't think so at all. I think they actually have something very deep. There's a deep observation to postmodernism. And the fundamental observation is that man is radically embedded and unable to extricate himself from his cultural background, that we are all hopelessly stuck in a cultural relativism, a relativity of culture that we cannot escape. Metaphysics cannot escape this. It tries, but it fails. This is actually something I spoke about recently on that interview that I did with Scott Mannion. I would encourage guys to go listen to that, because I was able to draw out quite a lot of this idea here. But suffice it to say that man is radically culturally embedded, unable to extricate himself from that. This is the fundamental observation of postmodernism. But the thing is, they look at it and they're all gay about it. They're like, oh, and it's so terrible. Like, you know, you can never actually reach the truth. And like tradition is arbitrary and stupid and like blah, 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 blah. This is the result that they come to, right? This is the conclusion that they draw. Whereas I think the traditionalist says all the same stuff. Yes, Man is radically embedded in his tradition. He can't escape it. He's fully bounded by it. But then the traditionalist comes around and says, and that's a good thing. Like that's the fundamental difference between the trad and the postmodernist. I think that's really the only difference between the trad and the postmodernist at the broadest, highest level. So anyway, I think postmodernism is something that's actually quite ancient, that it's a rediscovery of something that we knew and then forgot, and then the axial age came in, and we get all like cultural absolutism, I guess you could say, or non-relativity, metaphysics, the world, like metaphysics as the propositional description of objective reality that comes before the relativistic imperative that grounds it all. This is something that comes in anciently and kind of gets us off track, and then somehow impossibly irrationally through the ages, moving from the Renaissance through to the to the nationalistic period in the 19th century, on into the highly irrationalist 20th century and the postmodern period, we're kind of rediscovering this relativity thesis. Anyway, this is all just to say that postmodernism is, I think, rediscovering something, the story within the story, the contamination of audience and creator. All of this stuff is very, very ancient. And you get it in it's everywhere in the Neverending Story, like where Atreyu goes through that like ruin area. Do you remember that? I think it's like the second or third gate that he goes through, and he sees his own labors written on the wall, obviously already very, very ancient kind of thing. Like it's playing with this at every stage. And this is brilliant. I think this is actually what makes it so interesting, is that there's a story within the story, and there's like all of these nested layers. This is something that ancient poets did quite a lot. This is something that the ancient myths did all the time. And it's, to me, this is part of what makes it so mythic, is that it's reaching back and it's going to something that's even prior to like classical mythology, something that's very, very ancient. So yeah, I see a lot of postmodern strains in the movie, but they are reaching back to something. And I just thought that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I like that. Another thing I would like to point out about this film, and this is kind of a step in a different direction, but one thing that I like about this movie is that it's also kind of spooky. You know what I mean? It's a children's movie.
Oh yeah.
But it also has some uncanny weirdness and some it has tragedy in it, right? We mentioned before the horse Artax, right? They would never put something that traumatized. They would never put something that sad in a children's movie today. But back in the day, up until during what I call the modern golden age of entertainment between 75 and 95, they did that. They would do that. They understood that kids weren't dumb. That kids understand death. Kids understand tragedy. Kids understand sadness. And you know what? They need to interact with it. Yeah. Because they're not, when you're a kid, you're going to have to deal with your grandparents passing away. Your dog's going to die. They got to deal with that kind of stuff. You're going to have to deal with problems and tragedy. And you know what? Kids aren't dumb. They're not dumb. They don't need to be coddled and protected. What was it? Who's the Lion in the Witch Wardrobe guy? C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis wrote an awesome piece. I can't quote it directly, but he said he absolutely hates the direction where children's stories are being coddled. He said, why should we shield children from the world that they're going to grow up and inhabit? He said, write stories for children where there are monsters and there are trials and tribulations and there are tragedies and there's heroes and violence. And he's like, most importantly, allow the villain to be mercilessly beheaded at the end of the tale. Let the kids watch this bad guy get his head chopped off, because they're going to deal with bad guys in real life, and they need to know that you must destroy them, right? So the fact that these kinds of it wasn't just like the tragedy in the tale, but it was also the the whole film has a bit of nervousness because you're on the edge of ultimate destruction, like annihilation of this beautiful, wonderful realm. And they're like, no, please save us, please help. And you're on that edge, and it's all on Atreyu, and he's got to knock, he's got to win. And that, fuck this new crap, right? The new stuff that they come out with for kids. Not only like, let's take the pause and the crap and the propaganda out of it. It is so soft and gay and boring. And me and a friend were just talking about this. Why is it that the leftoids have gone into fantasy and stolen it? Why have they gone into sci-fi and stolen it and corrupted it? Why have they gone into the genres? And then why is it that they're not nearly as present in horror? I mean, they're in there. They go into everything. But if you go to a horror convention versus a sci-fi or fantasy convention or a comic convention, they're far less. You see far more normal people. Why? Because they want that coddled stuff. Their whole thing is about harm. There should be no harm, and everybody should be safe, and all this kind of stuff. Safety, safe this, safe that. I don't feel safe. We need to make these people feel safe. No harm, and harm is like this big deal to them, and horror is nothing but harm, right? So they don't like it as much. It's not as conducive to their agenda to make everything gay and boring. So in Neverending Story, there is harm, there is tragedy, there is sadness, and there is spooky shit too. Go look at the opening scene, not the opening scene, but go look at the scene where Atreyu appears, that council where he approaches the childlike empress. Look at the creatures that are there.
Yeah,
look at the creatures.
Weird.
They're weird and uncanny and kind of spooky looking. You could see them in some sort of sci-fi horror or something like that. It's very, very, nightmarish in some ways. It's not this comforting thing. There's almost a sense of like fantastical body horror or something. These tree people. There's the guys with 2 and 3 faces, and some of the stuff is completely asymmetrical, and it's nuts, and it's weird, and it kind of verges on disturbing. And that is really the good fantasy stuff, the stuff that verges on disturbing, because visually disturbing, because that is something that shows it's like you're now in a place that is not like reality. You're now in a place that does not have the comforts of the quantitative laws that govern your reality and your perception of reality. It's not something you can measure. It's not something that's familiar. You're now in this weirdness. And the vibe of the movie, there's lots of fog and smoke and clouds and swirling things, and just the environments are so gorgeous. You know what I mean? You feel like you're really on the fringes of the cosmos, how everything is just bizarre and strange and sort of familiar, but not. It's uncanny. And the fact that they made that for children back then is something they wouldn't even dare to do today. And you know what? That is why it's slapped so hard with kids, and why this movie, despite its some of its technical cheesiness that looks at some of the technical aspects of it didn't age well, and some of it aged masterfully. And for that reason, the Neverending Story is an immortal creation. It is an immortal creation that modern filmmakers couldn't even they couldn't do it if they wanted to, and they wouldn't even dare. They wouldn't even have the balls to try.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. They wouldn't even try, and I think that's part of the important. That's an important observation, because, and I mean, going back to what you said about like leftoids infesting all of entertainment, I think like this is not something that happens consciously, but it's sort of just emergent. Is that part of the reason why they don't want children to be exposed to the weird and the uncanny and the tragic and the harsh? Really, I mean, there is some harsh stuff in this movie as well. Part of the reason that they don't want that is, and this is not a conscious thing, pre-consciously, they don't want kids to be able to deal with that. They're worried about harm so much. It's like this sort of like meta level helicopter parent that wants to police the childhood, childhood in general, so that no harm ever enters into it. And ultimately, the result of that is that kids grow up and they become these like stunted adults that are still like eating breakfast cereal at like 30 and trying to relive their childhood, and they are like emotionally stunted, unable to deal with real tragedy, unable to look reality in the face. And I think that from the perspective of like pure structural conflict and power, that's exactly the thing that the regime wants, right? It doesn't want strong men and women to be cultivated by entertainment that prepares them for the tragic reality of life, right? Like that quote that comes from, it's either C.S. Lewis or Chesterton, where what fairy tales don't. It's not that fairy tales tell you so much that there are dragons out there. It's that dragons can be beaten, right? That's the point of the fairy tale, is that that hero can overcome the monster. And fundamentally, what the system doesn't want is heroes overcoming monsters. So it's set up in a structural way to prevent that from happening. And so you get these like mollycoddled children that emerge from entertainment that's like just there to teach them how to be girl bosses and how to everybody getting along, and there's not really like violence and conflict, and nobody really dies, and nothing's permanent, and all of this stuff. That's exactly what's going to produce sensitive, soft children who are going to grow up to not be able to challenge the system. So there's a reason why that happens. I'm not saying it's conscious, it's emergent, but something like the Neverending Story and other like classic films and like classic children's folk tales and everything. Like, think about something like Bluebeard, which is this folk tale about like a monstrous man that keeps like dead women in his closet kind of thing. Like, this is the kind of stuff that like children need to have. They need to be exposed to this, and they need to understand that Bluebeard eventually does get killed, right? So this is the kind of thing that Neverending Story gives you. It's this kind of thing that like classic 80s fantasy gives you that you don't really get today. And the weirdness aspect of it that Dave mentioned is very hard to recreate with like CGI or anything like that. You would really have to go back to these classic practical effects to achieve that. And that's a huge part of what gives it that vibe. Like, I just loved, like, as soon as I saw that like rock guy come on the screen, I was like, it just put a smile on my face. You know what I mean? Because there's something weird about him. There's something like that's just comforting, but also it's like you just wouldn't get that today. You know what I mean? But there's also something bizarre about it. It's a little bit scary. Like, when I was watching it with my kids, I could feel my youngest tense up when he comes onto the screen. You know what I mean? In a way that you don't get if you're watching like Disney Plus today or something. You just don't get that because everything's shiny and smooth and happy and friendly, and even the villains are not very threatening and like all of that kind of thing, right? This is kind of like just gives you something bizarre, and that's cool. You need that. People need that. Kids need that. So this movie gives it to them. I love it. I thought it was great.
Dude, I love the rock biter. You're right. He's there in wonder and awe. There's a little bit of fear, right? And kids love that. You know what I mean? The rock biter, when the rock biter, so I have boys. So when the rock biter pulls up, they get hype, right? This is my middle son. He's like,
this dude.
Yeah. He's like, look at the rock. They got to jump out of the way of the rocks. And blah, blah, blah. Like, he's big and friendly and everything, but he's also kind of dangerous because of how big and immense he is. You know,
he's like eating the rocks and they're like falling on them and everything.
He's so big. He doesn't even know. He can't even doesn't even know that they're there. But he's so cool because, I don't know, he's got this big booming voice, and he's, what does he say? But he only likes gourmet rocks, right?
Yeah.
Gourmet quartz or whatever he says.
This one is a real vintage.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, and he's kind of silly and absurd. He's like riding a bike. You know what I mean? Like crushes.
He's got like a
things.
grandfatherly quality to him as well. Somehow, I don't know how that comes around, but yeah,
exactly.
That's so nice.
Exactly. Yeah, he's just the characters in there. Just they're all a little spooky. Like what is that? The night hob or whatever. The guy. He's a little ugly looking, kind of spooky looking. And then there's the guy that plays the guy that rides the snail, right? He's been in a lot of movies. I can't remember all the movies that he's been in, but for folks that have ever seen the series Eastbound and Down, the second season, he's like the dwarf that's in there. The guy, he's like, I'm Yoda, bitch. Like that guy, that's him. He's actually pretty. I think he was one of the Ewoks. He's all over the place. But yeah, there's this like, so with my kids, my sons, I do not shy away from showing them. They love scary stuff. I love Dude, I was reading Creepy and Tales from the Crypt and like all this stuff back in the day. I adored it. I loved it. I was reading Poe in like 5th grade. You know what I mean? Poe is pretty disturbing. I loved it. I didn't need to be shielded from it. In fact, it was wonderful. And my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, who is old Calabrian man, it is a tradition in old Italian families to tell scary ass stories to kids and scare the shit out of them and like jump out and freak them out, and like it's like there's like I don't want to call it sadistic, but there's a tradition among those old world people that they have to scare the shit out of little kids. They get so much joy out of it. And I do.
But it's wholesome though, isn't it? Like it's giving wholesome. Them something they need.
Exactly. And I attribute my current worldview to that. So I didn't want to rob my kids of that. So I tell them, they're like, yo, Dad, they'll find a video about the dog man or some kind of freaky cryptid or Bigfoot or Dad, is that real? I'm like, yup, it is real. He lives in the woods. I scare the shit out of him, dude.
I do the same thing. That's hilarious.
It's the best.
Oh yeah, my kids will be like, Dad, is this magic real? Is this monster real? I'll be like, yes, it is, my dear. It is very real. Like when I like my youngest, I'll take her out every night. It's like something that we do every night. I'll go out and we look at the stars together. She started it, and it's a tradition. We just do it every single night. And one night we were like walking out there and look at the stars. She's always like points kind of, she'll like point back to the door and sort of nervously be like, let's go back. And because she's worried. And one night she's like, there's giants in this world, aren't there, Dad? I'm like, yes, honey, there are. Yes, there are. And even if I didn't believe in giants, which I do, but even if I didn't, I would still say yes. Because she needs wonder. She needs a magical worldview. She needs enchantment. The whole idea of this movie is that the nothing is coming and disenchanting the world. The world needs re-enchantment, and it will get it. People think that it can't. People think that re-enchantment is impossible. They're fucking wrong. Absolutely wrong. Axiality comes and goes. Like the rationality, like rationalizing the divine, comes and goes in human history. It came in at one point, and it basically pushed like civilizations over, and then we went back to our magical worldview in the dark ages, basically in the early middle ages. We went back to this pre-axial worldview, this magical worldview, and it's now the disenchantment of modernity has come back, and we will get there again when it tips over once again. These things go in cycles. We need to re-enchant the world, and that is in some measure that's going to be done via stories like the Neverending Story, and telling your kids all this kind of shit. So it's an important part of being a dad, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing I did want to bring up was there are so many analyses of this film by libtoads, and they suck. Every single one of them interprets the nothing as environmental crisis and climate change and stuff like that. And it's like the irony in that is so once again, they have zero self-awareness. You guys are the nothing, dude.
Exactly.
Liberalism is the nothing. Like, you guys turning everything into fucking science is the nothing. Like, reason and fucking, materialism and all this shit. That is the nothing. You guys are the fucking nothing, dude. How do you not see that? How do you not see it? Retards.
Oh, it's absolutely clear, I think. But like, they have to shoehorn this shit into everything, right? They have to read ideological undercurrents into everything. It's just, nothing can just be fantasy. Nothing can just be a traditional worldview. Nothing could just be mythic. Nothing could be. It all has to be allegorically telling you what it is that they already believe. It's gross, man. Like, no wonder they want to relive childhood. No wonder they kind of are in this like arrested development perpetual state where they need to experience childhood because they never really did. You know what I mean? Clearly they missed something. Clearly there's something defective in them. There's something incomplete. They never got that, right? I think that's a huge part of it. But like reading environmental, like cli-fi into the nothing. Give me a break. That's stupid. Like,
it's like
shit.
Them misinterpreting the nothing as some materialist horseshit is the nothing. You know what I mean? It's like it's like, I don't know. It's so meta, right? That's more meta shit. It's not only is the film meta, but the nothings, the nameless mist denizens out there, like are also meta. It's nuts to me.
The critical response is like meta.
Yeah,
you couldn't make this shit up.
I had one more thing I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it was. But oh yeah. So, do you have anything else you wanted to bring up about the film, Mike?
Nothing in particular. No.
So the Neverending Story is just, man, it's just timeless. It's timeless. It's immortal. It's magnificent and beautiful. It's kind of silly and absurd and fantastical. But if you go back and you watch it, dude, I didn't see anything in there that I thought was paused. You know what I mean? There's the childlike empress is she's like one of the main protagonists, but she's not the girl boss. She's very feminine and wonderful. She's what a childlike empress in this film should be, in a story should be. Atreyu is like what a little boy should be. The Bastion is what a little boy should be. There's I think there's like one black guy in it, and he's cool. You know what I mean? He's like, he's like this weird fucking alien dude, with the weird head, and he's like the childlike empress's, part of her council, and he's some sort of alien creature, and he's fucking cool. It's not anti-white, it's not pro-gay, it's not queer coded. There's none of that. It's just a wholesome, awesome film that should be watched by kids forever and ever until the end of time. And, all those critics that shit all over it, they're eating crow right now.
Yeah,
they're even still alive.
Yeah. The film manages to be both wholesome and challenging and to have like layers of depth to it. And that is something hard to achieve. Few films in any genre really achieve that. And for a children's film, this one lives forever. People still talk about it. It's been almost 40 years, and people still talk about it. So
yeah,
that's a testament.
We're talking about it. Yeah. And one thing that I think that it says is it also reveals, we're just talking about the libs. I made a post about leftoid gamers, how they have this weird like schizo duality where they pretend to white knight for femininity, but they also like hate femininity at the same time. It's this weird, nervous, frustrated. I don't know. It's this weird like paradox.
It's real incel energy. I mean, like that is kind of overplayed. Like it seems like every time people say, "Oh, it's like incel stuff," that it's just like a little bit ridiculous. This really it fits the bill. You know what I mean? They're kind of like the I think it goes into the whole trans thing where it's like the reason for this is that it's sort of a kind of bizarrely twisted, what's the word, sublimation of their like sexual frustration, where they're like, if I can't get the girlfriend, I'm gonna be the girlfriend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's an element of that into it, but there's something very sexually dysfunctional about this like hatred of like genuine bona fide femininity. Like it can't be strong, like it can't be heroic, like it can't be celebrated. It's like it's really contaminated.
It's really, really, it's twisted is the perfect word. You know what I mean? They will go nuts if there's not your female representation, because what they want is it. And then when they have this female representation, they make them all ugly and they make it so you can murder them. You know what I mean? It's like, which way do you want?
What kind of female empowerment is that?
It's bizarre. And their understanding, their relationship with like their childhood is the same thing, right? They want to cut the youthfulness, the imagination out of children and make them into these soft, like gay materialist adults. But then also they're these weird consumerist adults that can't get out of their childhood and their arrested development. It's absolutely bizarre and twisted and kind of unexplainable. It's like this paradox.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just down to dysgenics. I think that's what it comes down to. That's the explanation fundamentally for this is, it's all Strauss-Howe cycles basically, where fucking, strong men make for good times make for weak men. Basically, that's the explanation. That's where this is coming from. The thing doesn't hang together coherently. The worldview makes no sense. It's just basically nature. It's just an abomination of nature.
Yeah, it's an abomination, these people. So anyway, my conclusion is that the Neverending Story, I think it's important you guys go watch it with your kids, or even if you don't have kids, go watch it. Go watch it, because what I think is an important takeaway for us here is that we could be healthy, normal, we could be adults. We could be adults and then also have protect our childlike, youthful wonder. We can have both. We can have both in a healthy way. And this movie really, it was just special for me to rewatch this movie again. And it reminded me how important, I'm the guy that advocates, champions imagination. Every chance I get, I open my mouth about it. But this like reaffirmed it for me. And it was just I loved getting ready for this episode. I adored it. So guys out there, go check it out and everything like that. And Mr. Mike, should we close it up?
Let's shut it down.
Let's shut it down. So guys, thank you so much, each and every one of you. You're listening now. You're probably all signed up. But if you are not, go over to imperiumpress.org/podcast and go get signed up to the Gumroad. Man, there's all kinds of good stuff over there. Hardback, exclusive hardback books. There's freaking all kind of stuff over there. So go get signed up there, and you get Culture Dads every single week. You can't beat it. So hang out with us every single week. Go get signed up. All that good stuff. Growth of the Soil by Knut Hamsun from Imperium. Go pick that up. And also, did you want to talk about the new thing that you're going to be selling?
Yeah. So as of recording, we're just about to release our bookmarks. We've got new merch. We try to do cool stuff, basically, like, just a cut above kind of merch. That this is the kind of stuff that, like, I think is a bit of a bit of a collector's item. We've got them handmade by one of our guys. This is not something that's like, mass produced or whatever. They're handmade by one of our dudes, but it's really cool. I've got a bunch of them myself. They look amazing. They are bookmarks that are sort of like they're fashioned after the Studies and Reaction series. So each of our Studies and Reaction has a little symbol at the bottom right of each of the books in the series. We've got one of them with the Odal rune from Why I'm Not a Liberal by Jonathan Bowden. We've got one with the cross by Maestra, and we've got one with the Hearthfire symbol of the ancient family, which is the excerpt from the ancient city. And we've also got one just with the Imperium logo itself. So they are black leather, really high quality, nice bookmarks with the red stitching around the outside. Boy, it just looks fucking amazing. And they're limited edition. We've only made a certain amount of these, so once they're gone, they may not come back. So get them while they're hot. I'm really excited about this. I think we're doing really, really good merch stuff. I really want all the merch that we put out to be something that's kind of unique. We did that with the lino cut prints from Alexander Adams, and now we're doing it with these bookmarks. So that's really cool. Go check that out, guys. If you haven't already, if there's still some left by the time this episode airs, it's amazing. I think you're going to love it. So there you go.
Excellent stuff. So yeah, just get yourself a sweet leather handmade bookmark. Also, let's give a shout out. Who's our God Emperor tier guy again?
Kazilcom Cruiser. Mr. Cruiser, thank you so much for your patronage. Thank you, each and every one of you guys that are signed up to here. It helps Imperium Press solidify and grow and become an immortal institution, dude. We gotta build these things. We gotta build these institutions, and Imperium Press is doing it. And it's all thanks to you guys that are signed up here, you guys that buy books, all that kind of stuff. Speaking of buying books, you can go buy my books over at thebizarchives.com if you want some based fiction. Follow us on Twitter and Telegram at The Bizarchives. Mike, do you still have the song queued up? Shit, no, I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay, don't worry. Hold up. Okay, I don't have it either. So
we'll put it post production. It'll be the outro music.
Okay, awesome. So guys, go watch the Neverending Story. Go watch it. You're gonna love it. Your kids are gonna love it. I'll see you guys next time.